Socialism Saturday. We are not comrades on my channel. We are comrades on my channel. Welcome. Welcome to the most dystopian reality that you will see all week. This is Socialism Saturday, where we do indeed watch real socialism. We don't watch the CNN socialism, not AOC, this is not Bernie Sanders. We watch the farthest left of the far left because the farthest left of the far left will give us a preview of the talking points of the Democratic Party in just a few short years. It is uncanny. And yes, it is deeply disturbing and deeply, deeply dystopian, but we watch it because we want to make sure we understand what these people believe and what they're doing because they have such hubris that they tell us everything right out in the open. The problem is that no one watches it. No one listens to them. So we're going to be some of the few, the proud, the people who will sit here for hours on a Saturday evening to watch socialism, even though it drives us crazy and we all hate it. We are a very masochistic bunch on my channel. It's what we like to do. And that is going to be Socialism Saturday. Now, guys, I took it easy on you last week. I did. I took it down a notch. We did Anna-Kasparian Jacobin magazine socialism, which is really like the AOC, the Bernie Sanders. We took it down just a notch for a week. I mean, it was still crazy. Apparently, Anna-Kasparian thinks that everyone is required to go to Lollapalooza or something. But no, I had to pick out for this week something better, something that was going to just be like off the charts, real socialism again. And so I really dug deep on this one, guys. I found a YouTube channel with 16 subscribers on it and a video that only has 33 views from 3 years ago. And this is what we're going to be watching tonight. Being a socialist feminist online, a panel at Socialist Feminism Convergence. And the YouTube channel we are going to be watching is the Social Feminist Working Group. And it's got some other stuff on it too. We might not stop at this one panel because they don't have that many videos on this channel. They do have Sophie Lewis, full surrogacy now. That's a whole other dystopian nightmare right there. But in addition to having this socialist feminist online stuff, they also have Organizing Health Justice, part 1 and 2. That's going to be about your crazy left-wing post-birth abortion advocates. That's what that's going to be. We might watch them both tonight, depending on how it goes. We're going to have to see because this is they also have this keynote too, but they don't say what it's about. But I thought we would start here with their being a socialist feminist online and we would see how it goes. And if it goes well, we might stick around and make our way into the socialist feminist healthcare reproduction panel as well. And this is from 3 years ago. So what we're going to be looking for tonight is a couple of things. Number one, we're going to be looking for how many of the talking points that they bring up tonight are we seeing in the mainstream today? Because 3, 4, 5 years, that tends to be around the sweet spot when things go from the land of left-wing lunacy into the mainstream. So it is very possible that we could hear things in this panel that they did 3 effing years ago, and it would have relevance to things that are coming out of the mouths of the Democratic Party today. So keep that in mind as we're watching it. But generally speaking, I find it's compelling to watch content like this that you know is going to be uber dystopian that no one else has ever watched. I have more people watching this stream right now on all the different platforms I'm streaming on, YouTube, Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, Gitter, that have watched this panel in total. And I'm completely convinced that if we just keep watching this uber socialist content, eventually we're going to stumble on some channel, some video that like 3 people have ever watched that is going to be a complete and total confession of what they did in 2020 to fortify the election. I'm completely convinced of this. It's out there. We just need to keep watching it until we actually find it. So that is Socialism Saturday, guys. Please mount that like button for me if you have not already. We have a couple of orders of housekeeping before we get started. Number 1, tomorrow is movie night. In my supporter Discord, we are watching a great holiday classic that is going to be Scrooged based on the poll that is currently going in my locals community. And I think this is what we're going to be watching. It seems to be the clear-cut winner. We are going to be watching that as a group at 8 p.m. tomorrow night Eastern Time in my supporter Discord. If you want access to my supporter Discord so you can not only come to this movie night, but all of our movie nights, because we are basically doing them on like a weekly basis now, what you need to do is head over to activelyunwoke.com/support, and you can join, and this link is in the description below. Already coughing. That's good. That's a good sign. The link is in the description below. You can join my Patreon. You can join my locals. You can even become a supporter on the YouTube channel that we're watching on right now. So if you join the YouTube channel as a member, that's going to get access to the supporter Discord. But basically, sign up on Patreon or on locals. I might recommend locals between the two. Patreon is great. Patreon gives different levels of giving and it gives different perks. Locals, you're going to get a lot more direct interaction with me. But either's clever, whatever works for you. And if you sign up tonight on the stream on whatever platform you're watching on, then you're going to be able to come to movie night. I will be sending out the links to the supporter Discord tomorrow afternoon at some point, so that we can get together and watch Scrooge. And the movie nights in my supporter Discord are so fun. Jennifer is doing a great job hosting them, and basically, like, we do trivia. We talk about the movie. We have a great time with it. It's just a wonderful group of people. And you also get all sorts of other perks when you become a supporter of my work, either on Patreon, locals, stuff like that. And so if you want to do that, that is available as an option to you. And that's all. That's really the thing I have to shill today. But before we get started, I do need to pour myself a beer. And might I strongly recommend that everyone, if you drink, if you don't drink, that's fine. Go get a nice cup of water or tea or soda or non-alcoholic beverage. We are all inclusive of different drinking habits, but I'm drinking alcohol and I'm not going to apologize for it. And I actually have a boring beer select. Well, it's not boring, but it's like I only have one type of beer, but I have 4 of them. And we're going back to the birthday cake beer. Check it out. I love this. It's not even a real beer. It is a malt beverage. This is from Froth Brewing Company. This is in Buffalo, New York. And this is a Frosty birthday cake malt beverage, 6% alcohol. And you know what it tastes like? It tastes like a sparkling raspberry smoothie. That's what it tastes like. Look at this. It's nice and red for Socialism Saturday. Got to get our communist colors in there. But it's so beautiful. It's so thick. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my God. Cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining me for Socialism Saturday. Now, let's get set up to get started. Please mount that like button for me. I'm just going to get my sound set up. I want to let you know, if you have not been to a Socialism Saturday stream before, if you are not used to watching socialism, here's the thing. It is going to sound like they are speaking a foreign language, because they might be using the same words that we use. They might technically be speaking English, but they have completely different meanings for things and they speak in completely different ways. And the reason I preface that is that if you don't understand what they're saying, it's not you. You are not the problem here. Okay? It is because they are speaking a completely different language. So, my advice to you is, if you can't understand what they're saying, first off, it's okay to ask questions in the chat. Oftentimes, we're trying to decipher it ourselves. I will do my best to be a translator of socialism. I will also look to people who are regulars in the chat. You can also offer your ideas on the points that they're making and what they're trying to get across. So we help each other understand socialism on Socialism Saturday. But if you can't understand it, you will start to understand it if you watch it for a little while. It's kind of like in the Matrix, where like the Matrix has like all those numbers coming across the screen and all those letters, and it just looks like gibberish. And then they say after a while you start to understand what it is. It's the exact same thing with socialism. You're gonna learn the meanings of their words and how they talk through osmosis, but you got to sit through it for a little while. I promise you, you're gonna get some of the most dystopian viewing you've ever gotten in your life. But you have to just lean into it and be aware that it might have a little bit of a learning curve. If you have questions, please ask in the chat. We are a really, really friendly bunch, and we will help you guys understand it as best we can. All right. I think that's it. Mount that like button if you are ready to start Socialism Saturday. We are watching Being a Socialist Feminist Online from the Socialist Feminist Convergence Conference on the Socialist Feminist Working Group YouTube channel. Let's get this party started. All right, let me fast forward a little bit here. Yes, Trendlin is making a great point. They suck at technology. It's not my fault. It's their fault. Looks like they're getting settled. Okay. Oh, they're taking a picture or something. Start the panel. Oh no, YouTube doesn't want us to watch socialism.
I think this session's going to be really fun, and these lovely folks are going to energize us. So this is
good idea, James.
a socialist feminist online, and please join me in welcoming the very lovely Season of the Bitch podcast hosts. We have almost a full coven.
It's very loud. I think it's going to get quieter once she gets off my mic.
So we have Helen, Laura, Zoe, and Juanita from Season of the Bitch, and we're also really excited to welcome Allison from the Library of Freedom Project. So without further ado, take it away.
Thank you so much. We just wanted to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the Lenape.
Land blessing! Land blessing!
In this church. Okay. So, Season of the Bitch is a leftist feminist.
All right, guys. Obviously, the sound is a little messed up because these people have no idea how technology works. I'm going to try to sit through it for a minute. The captions are on. So hopefully we can make it work. But if we can't make it work, we can watch something else. But I want to just give it a try for a second to see if anything improves. Sometimes when we're watching socialism, somehow they fix the sound like 15 minutes into it. So I just want to like, you know, we need to sit with it. We have the captions. And we're going to just give it a try.
Podcast, if y'all haven't heard of us, we're on most of your streaming things. We started almost 2 years ago, and we started because we found there to be like a massive hole in leftist podcasting. It was at a time when we were getting really annoyed with varying
there's a massive hole in leftist
podcasting. Its spaces within media and within online spaces. And so we wanted to create something different, and so we decided to create a podcast that was for everyone that wasn't a cis man. And so the guests we have are people other than cis men.
Yeah, so Tom J says it's better with headphones. I'll be honest, guys, I can understand them just fine with the headphones. The echo is annoying, but I can actually understand what they're saying just fine with headphones. And of course, we do have the captions there as well. So if you have headphones, might I recommend that you bust them out, because you already know based on what they've already said. So basically what they've already said is like they started a socialist feminist podcast because they didn't think there were enough socialist feminist podcasts because it's a cis het space. And so you already know this is going to be like one of the wokest things we've ever watched. And so we need to persevere, guys. I promise it's going to be okay.
And all of our hosts are people other than cis men.
Yeah, so this is, as you guys may know from
reading your programs, which I assume is what brought you here. This is a Being a Socialist Feminist Online panel. And we have sort of two, I think, sides of that coin here. We have a cybersecurity expert, and then we have people who have stumbled into not being doxxed somehow. Just a bunch of goofballs.
Not secure at all.
So I think what we wanted to talk about a little bit was the side of things where you're engaging in the world through the internet in its various forms, and like how that can be a positive and really like encouraging, wonderful thing. Because I think we have had a lot of like really good experiences. So first of all, we met each other online. I figure we can outline sort of the things and then maybe we can talk about them. Yeah, so we connected online in a way that is only very recently become possible for people to connect. And I definitely have a personal flavor that there is a really important political space on the internet. I think we're probably evidence of that. So it's the way that we met. It's obviously the way that we disseminate our message. You can only get the podcast by downloading it or streaming it somewhere, anywhere besides Spotify, because they don't like the word bitch, I guess, which is fair.
There's not very nice.
So not Spotify, but all these other places.
I just want to say really quickly that it's actually, that was the case at first, but since Rihanna has paved the way for us, we just need to link up some stuff.
Oh, I was okay. So the sort of online space as a place of spreading information in a constructive way, and I think the third thing that it seems like you might want to talk about is online spaces as a way to build community, which is I think similar to sort of the first thing about connecting with people, but I think there's, in addition to just meeting people, there's also the sort of intentional construction of a space. And
okay, so I'm still seeing people in the chat complain about the video and the audio, which I totally get. Now, we can watch the other presentation if you guys want. We can try it out. It seems like they're in a smaller room in the other presentation. Because here's what I don't want. If people are complaining more about the quality of the video and the audio more than they are actually listening to what they're saying, then this is going to be a total wash. So, do we want to try to go and watch the other presentation? I'm going to patiently wait for people. Okay, people are saying go try the other one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try the other presentation. Let's see. Because that one does seem to be in a smaller room, so the acoustics might be a little better. And it's still the same Socialist Feminist Conference. So this is still the same event. This is in two parts. This is for Organizing Health Justice Panel at the Socialist Feminist Convergence Part 1. So maybe this will be better.
In Pittsburgh, DFA. Last but not least, we have Jen James, and she is from New York Socialist Feminist Working Group. So I will hand the panel over to the panelists. But before I start, I want to keep the panelists, keep in mind that the presentation should only last around 15 to 20 minutes max, so we have plenty of room for discussion. If you have any questions for the panelists, please wait until the end. And yeah, I will use these time cards to let you know about the time. But let's get started. Ulrika, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes.
Oh, captains, thank you, Judy.
Good morning, right? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and being a part of this healing justice. I will be talking about the war on drugs, recovery, and restitution from a mindset of a Black organizer. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm an organizer. I've been organizing in Philadelphia off the record for about 5 years and being paid to do it for a year. So that's really interesting. I'm also an actress. I like to bring my acting and things I care about into the acting realm. And I also am a writer. So I write a lot about the things that are happening in my community. I'm right here from Southwest Philadelphia,
Sound is better.
area. went to John Bartram High School, and it's really important to me that people are coming out and that we can come together collectively. I'm not in any part of DSA chapter, but I have worked with DSA, and I believe them to be my allies in this fight, my comrades. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Welcome, comrades.
Yeah, thank you for those words.
He doesn't know what
So my name is
socialism
Crystal
means yet,
Grabowski,
Black girl.
and I, like Ann said, I'm the co-chair of the Socialist Feminist Committee in Pittsburgh, and I was an educator for a decade. I taught middle school, and then I started working in healthcare, and I'm going to be talking about abortion access as health justice. And I've worked with Pittsburgh DSA for about 2 years, and I identify as a socialist feminist, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to go over this topic with y'all.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Hi, my name is Jen James. I'm from the New York City Socialist Feminist Working Group.
I feel like we've seen her before.
We've been working on the New York Health Act and Medicare for All for about 2 years. And I've also tried to bring healthcare justice, like an expansive healthcare justice perspective into this campaign. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about our E9 Women campaign, which is about wages for home healthcare workers, NISNA, the NISNA strike that did not happen in New York, or that happened, they won. They got a great contract, but I'll talk a little bit about that, how we can bring workers into this fight. I also would like to apologize. I found out I would be presenting on this panel an hour ago. So I'll try.
Yay, lack of
if I'm rambling a little bit, I
preparation.
apologize.
All right. So I'm going to be talking first, and then we are going to move over to Jen and then Orica, and we're going to have questions in between. So I'm going to get started just to get us going. So I'm going to be talking about abortion access as a health justice issue.
Told you, this is going to be about abortion. Told you.
Go over my background a little bit, like why am I talking about this? I work at one of those high volume abortion clinics in the country.
So with socialists, the only aspect of healthcare that socialists ever talk about is abortion. That's why anytime you see something around healthcare, health justice in relation to the far left, it is always and universally going to be about abortion.
Restrictions. I work in Western Pennsylvania, and I speak with anywhere between 10 to 40 patients a day, and it is my job to help them access abortion services, prepare for their appointment, and obtain financial assistance, and I also review their medical history. So I listen to patients' experiences every single day, and as I'm listening, it really reveals a complex array of obstacles and a system that ultimately fails patients. And when people talk about abortion access, they often talk about it as like a silo, as its own thing. They don't often connect it to health justice as a whole. And that's what I really want to do, because patients' experiences and everything that they have to go to access this care is incredibly telling about the state of our current healthcare system. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be basically telling a story. It is actually National Tell a Story Day, so this works out really well. And I'm going to tell a story that is meant to illustrate roadblocks, dead ends, complications, and frustrations that are experienced during the process of accessing abortion care or care in general. And I'm going to do this in pursuit of answering the question, how does our healthcare system produce inequality among those seeking care? So in order to do that, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to introduce a character whose experiences are based on the conversations that I have with people on a daily basis. So
No, they have abortion care. Are you shitting me, Tom
Their
Jen?
name is Avery.
That can't be
Avery is
real.
a single parent of 2 young children.
Come on.
Their work hours fluctuate significantly on a monthly basis. They work one steady job throughout the year and a seasonal job for supplemental income. Some months are more difficult than others when it comes to their finances. They are 36 years old, and they have ovarian cysts that cause them frequent pain and period irregularity.
What do you notice about the story that she's telling? There is something very striking to me about how she's telling this story. I just want to like rewind it a little bit, listen again, and I'm gonna see if you guys pick up on what I'm picking up on. The story is about an imaginary person named Avery. Their name is Avery. Okay, now listen closely.
Avery is a single parent of 2 young children. Their work hours fluctuate significantly on a monthly basis. They work one steady job throughout the year and a seasonal job for supplemental income. Some months are more difficult than others when it comes to their finances. They are 36 years old and they have ovarian cysts that cause them frequent pain and period irregularities.
No genders, no genders, you guys got it. They're talking about a woman, but they're not using the pronoun she. There. Is it happening to her? No, it's not happening to her. It's a they. No, well, she says she has, I mean, they said she has ovaries. So it is a woman. It is a woman. Like, men don't have ovaries, but they're not using gendered terms because they want to abolish gender, which does not mean they want to abolish women. They want to abolish the gender binary. They want everyone to be non-binary. That's why they say she, they, or he, they. They're trying to abolish the binary.
Regularity, as many people do. They also have a history of high blood pressure, and they take blood pressure medication to keep that under control. They spent almost a decade trying to alleviate their symptoms of headaches and abdominal pain before finding medications and methods that work for them. They received a varied mix of diagnoses before finding doctors that helped them come up with an effective health plan. It was a frustrating process of being dismissed, misunderstood, and left with unpleasant side effects from various prescription medications. One day, Avery sends in their pay stubs to Medicaid as required, and Medicaid rules that they make slightly too much to qualify for state insurance. The letter they receive in the mail reveals that they made only $25 over the cutoff. So they're kicked off Medicaid. This makes them unable to afford both their high blood pressure medication and their birth control. They get Liza, and they opt for the high blood pressure medication, but they still miss a month of their prescription, which results in a high blood pressure reading at a doctor's visit. There are more affordable prescriptions of the birth control pill, and when they call into their OBGYN, the doctor insists that they must come in before writing a new birth control prescription. I want you to consider that the cost of a birth control consultation with a pelvic exam without insurance can cost between $100 and $150. So after their income goes up again the following month, they resubmit their pay stubs to Medicaid, and they qualify once again, so they're back on health insurance, but not without their prescriptions. Then their period is late, but it's common because ovarian cysts frequently mess with their cycle. After 2 weeks pass, they take a pregnancy test, and it is negative, so they think they're fine. Then 2 more weeks pass, and they still haven't gotten their period, so they take another pregnancy test, and it's positive. They do not want to have another child. They begin to worry about
Then they should not have had sex without using a condom.
about the serious health risks that are related to carrying a pregnancy to term. Their 2 previous pregnancies were really rough experiences. They had
condoms are free at Planned
which left them on
Parenthood.
bed rest for weeks and unable to work or even perform housework chores. Their last delivery compromised their health even more than the first, and they're worried about their health and the well-being of their children. They keep thinking, what would their children do if something were to happen to them? I want you to consider that the US maternal mortality rate increased from 17 deaths to 26 deaths every 100,000 births between 1990 and 2015. I also want you to consider that the global maternal mortality rate decreased in that same time period, 44%. And also,
Yeah, exactly, Jill.
Abortion,
It's impossible
59% of
to
abortions
manage
are attained
having
by people who already
like
have
protected
children
sex
and
when
have
not on birth
pregnancies.
control. Just impossible. It's so hard.
So they're worrying and work picks up again. And Avery spends 2 weeks working constantly and battling internally over what they should do. They feel terrible, exhausted, and sick. They're getting morning sickness and cramps so bad that they struggle to go to work. One day after work, they're exhausted and they Google the word abortion and make an appointment at the first place they find that's near them. It's just down the road from their workplace and they're relieved. So the clinic can see them quickly and they're grateful. The staff is incredibly reassuring over the phone, and Avery visits them a week later and receives an ultrasound. The staff shows them the screen, points at the image, and says, "Look at your baby. Isn't it cute?" They begin to feel very uncomfortable and upset. They didn't expect this.
Oh, they found a
And they're taken
crisis
off guard.
pregnancy center. It's a crisis
They dress
pregnancy
after the
center.
ultrasound and meet the staff in the room, and they ask, "So when can I schedule for my procedure?" The staff tells them that there's no rush, and they'll call them in a week. They leave the clinic expecting.
So what's happening? And I know this from watching amaze.com and the cartoons that they made to explain to middle schoolers how to emancipate themselves from their parents so that they could have an abortion. What's happened in this story is that this woman has not actually found herself an abortion clinic. She's found a crisis pregnancy center run by right-wing conservatives who are going to give her an ultrasound to try to guilt trip her into keeping the baby. That's what's about to be explained to you. And they're going to say the evil right-wing conservatives tried to trick her to prevent her from having the abortion that she rightfully deserved because she couldn't do a good enough job of looking into the place that she was calling to make sure that it actually offered abortion services. I also just want to say that condoms are literally free at Planned Parenthood. It's not that hard. You walk into Planned Parenthood, there is a bowl of condoms, even outside of the waiting room. They just have a bowl of condoms out in any Planned Parenthood. Fact check me, or this is the way it used to be anyway. They have a bowl of condoms out. You can walk into Planned Parenthood, take literally as many free condoms as you want, and leave, and you don't have to talk to anyone. So don't tell me it's impossible not to have unprotected sex when you don't have like a job or something like that, because you can literally walk into a Planned Parenthood and get as many free condoms as you want. Yes, you can take the whole bowl. Yes, absolutely. I know people who have done this. You can take the whole effing bowl. Yes, you could take the whole bowl. I've seen people go into a Planned Parenthood with a bag in which they dump all the condoms in it, and the staff just come out. They fill the bowl back up with condoms. That's the way it works.
Call from the staff. And a week passes, and the staff calls to check in. Avery asks them over the phone, "So when can I schedule for an abortion?" The staff tells them that they don't do abortion.
See? Told you.
She's shocked.
Crisis
They ask if they
pregnancy
can
center.
refer them to another place. The staff replies, "We don't do abortion referrals." I want you to consider that this location is called a crisis pregnancy center that
Yep.
they went to.
Boom.
53% of the websites include false and misleading information, and 58% of the websites include false information regarding abortion services. So they go back to the internet and they find an abortion provider finally, but they're more than 2 hours away in a city where they've never been. They call to schedule an appointment. They discover then that because there are so few abortion providers in the area, they have to wait 3 weeks to come in for an abortion. By the time of their appointment, they will be 14 weeks pregnant. They discover that the cost is $815, and the insurance they fought so hard to have won't even cover it. They have no choice but to pay out of pocket. Consider the facts that 90% of U.S. counties.
She should have gotten those free condoms to Planned Parenthood then, man. It's the way it goes.
It's gotten worse. 14% of abortion patients rely on some sort of financial assistance from an organization, and 53% of abortion patients have to pay out of pocket. Avery realizes how much time was wasted on the uncertainty around their irregular period, and with the time spent at this other clinic that didn't even provide abortions. They are screened for financial assistance at the abortion provider, but the assistance can only lower their cost to $570, which is still an entire month's rent for them. They inquire about sedation, and it costs $150.
This would have been another solution, indeed.
That's so much money for groceries for their family,
You know?
so they opt out of sedation, even though they are worried
It's a
about
legit
pain.
option.
When Avery discloses their high blood pressure medication and their most recent reading to the staff at the abortion provider, they are told that they must continue to take their blood pressure medication, and if the reading is too high the day of their appointment, they might need to be referred to a hospital for the procedure. This increases their anxiety about their appointment, their finances, and their health even more. On top of that, the clinic says that Avery needs to drive the 2 hours to their site for mandatory state counseling several days before their actual appointment. I want you to consider that 18 states require counseling at least 24
Yeah,
hours.
this is actually a really good point. Where is the person who impregnated this person? Where is the father? Where is the other half of this equation, and why aren't they paying the bill?
Before an abortion. They miss a day of work to do this, and when they also request off work for their procedure appointment, their employer's
She didn't
pissed.
just trip
The
and get
bosses
it
begin
in
to hint
and
that they could
become
be
pregnant.
terminated if they take off more work. This is horrible news because their morning sickness and side cramps have been debilitating, and Avery pleads with their employer to let them have off those days, and they allow it, but Avery receives a letter saying that they've been put on an improvement plan because of their attendance issues. They also are required to obtain childcare because childcare is not, or children are not allowed in the medical facility. So they have to obtain childcare twice for both the mandated counseling and for their procedure appointment for their 2 young children. When it comes to transportation, Avery can't find a ride for their state mandated counseling visit, so they must call a Lyft. They managed to find a ride for their procedure appointment, but I want you to consider that
Too bad the
45%
father
of
couldn't have
Americans
driven him.
have no access to public transportation. By the time Avery's appointment arrives after weeks of waiting, they feel incredibly sick, and they've dropped over $1,200 on medical costs, childcare, and transportation. Despite all the obstacles, frustration, and grief over this, Avery feels confident that this is the best
wouldn't
decision for
surprise
themselves
me.
and their family. They are afraid that they are about to lose their job. They are afraid that they will be referred out of their appointment if they have a high blood pressure reading that day, wasting more money and time. They feel ashamed of the situation, and it does not occur to them that they deserved more help during any point of this process.
I think it's really impressive she's done this whole monologue
While
without
Avery
saying
in
the
this
word
story is
she.
a hypothetical person, and we're all imagining them in slightly different ways, it's very important to recognize that the scenario in which Avery is a Black person residing in this country, the barriers in that situation are much greater in obtaining quality care than they were if they were white. In the US, Black women are 2 to 6 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women. Also, Black women are more impacted by restrictions, resulting in delayed care, increased costs, or total lack of access to care. So I created this narrative using common experiences that I problem solve with people on a daily basis. I talk with people and I try to help them figure out how to afford the procedure. I try to help them figure out how to get to the clinic. I try to help them to figure out how to afford a ride, how to get childcare, how to do things like cope with the pain that they're going to experience because they can't afford the pain medication, with their health problems and how that is going to relate with their experience. So even though I'm just telling this story, there are amazing people who actually create platforms for individuals to share their experiences of accessing abortion services. So there's We Testify, which is a program with the National Network of Abortion Funds, and they allow people to share their stories. And what's really wonderful about them is that they center the most marginalized, and they're largely organized and run by Black women. So if you want to check them out, it's We Testify. Their website is wetestify.org. And their handle on Twitter is @abortionstories. And you can also find them, you can find them on their handle @abortionstories. So that's my story about things that I talk about with people on a daily basis. So that is from the patient's perspective. So that's from the patient's perspective. So before we move on to kind of looking at the same sort of situation from other perspectives, like the laborer's perspective, I want to pose the question I posed initially: how does our healthcare system produce inequality amongst those seeking healthcare? So I'm going to repeat that again. How does our healthcare system produce inequality amongst those seeking healthcare? So think about this story. Think about Avery's experience, and I want everybody to turn to the people in their group, because everybody's fairly grouped together at this point. So turn to the people closest to you and start talking about how does this process create inequality in our society. I'll give you about 5 minutes, and then we'll share answers so you can start the discussion, talk about things that came up in the story.
Ooh, an activity. Do we have to stay here through the whole activity, or do they edit this, do you think? There's no way in the world they oh, they turned the sound off. I am fairly positive we've seen this woman in the bandana before. I don't remember where, but does anyone else recognize her? I'm fairly positive this is not the first time she's shown up. All right, guys, you're watching Socialism Saturday. Let me finish knitting this row, and then I will fast forward us through this. But please mount that like button if you have not already. We are watching Socialist Feminism tonight, and they are talking about healthcare right now. We also have other options we can watch on this channel. Listen, man, we can get into Sophie Lewis after this. If you haven't seen Sophie Lewis yet, Sophie Lewis is insane. She's the woman who wants all children to be born via surrogacy. Let me see. Let me just fast forward. We do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, unless I announce otherwise. They're still chatting.
One thing, sir.
Oh, now they're doing their report back. Okay.
Well,
All right.
their answer or something that they discussed in when they were answering,
We may
how
have
does
been.
our healthcare
That might be
system
it.
produce inequality amongst those seeking care? My eyes are really bad, so I can't read your name tags. I'll point, I'm sorry. Delilah.
Should I speak from here?
Yeah, that's great.
One thing our group discussed is how inequality is created in our schools, specifically our sex education. As we discussed from my experience and from Jeremy's, abortion is not, information on abortion is not provided at all in schools. And poor sex education is given, like what preventive options you have, no discussion of condoms or pills and abortion before. Some Natalie's tell a story that her sister's school gave them folic acid pills to encourage pregnancy. It said support.
Yeah, so
I'm
rather
sorry.
than giving condoms or giving, actual other methods, they just preventatively just gave all the girl students folic acid pills just in case they got pregnant. We had a very high pregnancy rate in our town.
Sorry.
Yeah, and like, what? I know that's like not okay.
And that takes a lot of money.
That was so loud.
Where are they putting the resources?
I'm sorry to anyone who just got their ears blown out.
They don't want to put the money into giving kids condoms, but they will pay for folic acid.
And another way that factors
Very small
into
town.
is that a lot of times when people find out that they're pregnant, it's like, okay, well, what's the next step? We're never told like how to manage a pregnancy or anything about pregnancy health and what to do. So that's why it's so easy for places like crisis pregnancy centers to take advantage of that, because people don't know what to do. So it's so easy to just manipulate them. Exactly.
In my faith and shock, this Natalie's story came from a small town. So these towns, instead of giving access to information out, limit the financial burden of having a child or getting an abortion, they rather spend limited funds on avoiding the problem. Avoiding that.
Thank you. So who else had their hand up?
Yeah, so Tom works in the medical field as a therapist, mental health field, and we talked a little bit about intersectionality and how
Intersectionality.
like when a client or a person comes to a healthcare space to receive services, they kind of come as a complete person. So their gender expression, their sexual identity, their race, their socioeconomic class, all of those things are factors into how they receive care. And we also talked a little bit about how doctors prescribe less pain medication to people of color, especially women of color, because apparently we don't feel pain. So, and those internalized biases, Tom was mentioning that, in medical school or in these medical spaces, they don't talk about race, gender, biases, but they still have them because doctors are people like everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to share their thoughts from the discussion before we move on?
Hi, I'm TB, AHG here. So our group didn't really answer the question. I think we had a lot of abortion care providers, so we just kind of shared abortion stories. But like hearing the story of Avery, I think one of the biggest answers for me in terms of like how do we reduce inequality among those seeking healthcare is her being a mom and not being able to bring her child into the clinic.
Yeah.
Because like that's really one that even as an abortion care provider, I don't know how to solve.
I know, and I always feel so bad telling them, and then they're just like, there's just so little I can say when that comes up. They're like, what do you mean I can't bring my children? What am I gonna do? And it's like,
Is there a medical reason?
I think it's a cisgender straight white male issue. That they're the closest ones to creating these policies.
Who's the real problem here with abortion access for women? Cisgendered straight white men. I'm sorry, I need to relive that moment. That was fantastic. I'm sorry, I just need to back up a little bit.
telling them, and then they're just like, there's just so little I can say when that comes up. They're like, what do you mean I can't bring my children? What am I gonna do? And it's like,
Is there a medical reason?
I think it's a cisgender straight white male issue.
Obviously.
That they're the closest ones to creating these policies of owning these places.
Everyone shake their fist at the sky.
I think that affects a lot of things. We are told that we don't have the space in our clinic, and it's like we would want to take them to a separate room so that way it doesn't bother other people, because seeing children is not really an appropriate place. But we don't have extra rooms, so we're like in this tiny little building. So it's like the fact that cis white men are making these decisions, the fact that we don't really have a lot of money, we're just like in this little tiny building. It's like a kind of a couple factors. But sorry,
No, yes, I totally agree with that. Like I feel like I'm trying to like dream solutions around this. Like what would we do? Like we also have like a small building. Like would we create like a child care center downstairs? Like how radical would that be to be like moms have abortions? But then every patient walking to the abortion clinic is in this like super happy child care facility.
I know.
And they don't necessarily want a child. And that's an interesting thought process. So I don't have a solution.
Mount the like button if you think that cis heterosexual white men are responsible for everything that's wrong in the world.
At this point, we're going to move on to Jen.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk, now that we've spoken about like patients and their experiences with accessing healthcare, I'm going to talk about things from like the labor aspect of, so I'm going to talk a little bit about SocFem's Ain't I a Woman campaign, which is trying to get fair wages for home health workers. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the NISNA strike. And then I want to see
Damn it, James Jones.
sneak in Decrim NY, which is about, providing decriminalized sex work, which I think will, sort of lead into what America, am I saying that right? Oh, Arica, thank you, is going to talk about.
Down with the patriarchy and their interference with women getting the abortions they rightfully deserve.
Is a campaign we endorsed pretty recently. We're trying to get fair wages for home health workers. Right now in New York, home health workers work 24-hour shifts, which is insane, to work for a full day and night. And then on top of that, they're only paid 13 hours of that 24-hour shift. How is this even possible, right? So they're not making minimum wage. They're not able to live lives with their family. All of us have existence outside of our workplace. At least we should. Right, and home health care workers, they tend to be low-wage immigrant women who are expected to just work days upon days. And the reason for this is, of course, cost, because 24-hour care can be very expensive, particularly for people who, may be retired or may be disabled, probably don't have a lot of income on their own. And so there's really been people have really been pitting patients against workers in this fight, saying that like, oh, we can't pay people fairly because it's gonna affect patients and their access to care, right? And this is why we're all socialists, right? Because we all believe that we can't pit poor people against each other, that we have to work together for our own liberation. So like nobody is being helped here. How well can you take care of somebody if you're working 24 hours straight, right? And you're not being paid well on top of it. So it's been very disappointing. I mean, like even to the point where it's been hard to get legislative support on it because none of the unions support this, which is like a whole nother thing. I mean, some healthcare home health workers are unionized and their union isn't doing jack shit about it. And certainly none of the other healthcare unions have really been terribly supportive either. And so I think this is like an important fight that we're trying to draw attention to because it's just like so obvious. Like, why are we, you have to pay people for their labor, right? Like, I mean, and the excuse they say is like, oh, well, people are, we don't have to pay them for these 11 hours because people are sleeping or doing things, but like, obviously you're there. You have to be there, right? It's not like you can leave.
All right, we got a super chat from Malty Drider. Malty Drider says, feminist blaming patriarchy is like conservative Christians blaming Satan for their bad choices or problems. Other words, take responsibility, I think is what that should be. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The far left and the far right are two sides of the same coin. Exactly.
Even if you're sleeping, you have to be like alert enough to like, maybe they need help or, your patient needs help during the night. Yeah. So the whole thing is ridiculous. Recently we have been fighting in the court. We had won a court case saying that this was like obviously illegal and we needed to get paid for the full 24 hours. But then it lost on appeal. So we're trying to like figure out what the next step is. I think we're going to try to do legislation to stop this blatant wage theft.
Or people could just like not work. I mean, that's like always an option. I feel like they really overlook.
But it's mostly like education and like bringing awareness about this issue, especially because the 89 Women campaign is like a coalition effort and we are just like a supporter of this. So as DSA, I think we're trying to support and bring attention to these issues. Yeah, so that's one of the campaigns that we're working on. We were also doing strike solidarity support with the Naismith strike.
Oh, that's the end of part 1. Don't worry. There's a part 2. Hang on, we just gotta get it loaded. All right, we're gonna be back in business here. There it is.
Written is that it covers everything Medicaid covers, which in New York is like very comprehensive. It covers abortion, it covers trans health, like birth control, long-term disability, all of the good things. So it's legislation that's very close to my heart. And NISNA has been like one of our main supporters. But there's like this interesting challenge where they like support this really great legislation, but they've also sort of like tied themselves very closely with Governor Cuomo, who I don't know how many New Yorkers are here, but like Governor Cuomo is the enemy. Like, yeah, please hit. Governor Cuomo can go fuck himself, right? I'm glad he's adopted Cynthia Nixon's entire platform. Like, it's not enough. Anyway. So So it's like this very interesting challenge of like nobody's really working on this legislation because nobody wants to go up against Governor Cuomo. Which is all to say, like, this ties sort of into the strike is that they really have moved away from single payer legislation and are now working on state staffing, which is great legislation. It like nurses right now are terribly overworked. They can have upwards of like 8 to 10 patients at a time, which is completely ridiculous. It's not good for patient care, right? Like you can't adequately manage 10 patients at a time.
I want to hear more about abortion.
People,
Can we go back to talking about abortion, please?
People to die. It's really bad. And recently, they wrote a strike over it, which was, I think, like a very exciting demand. The levels they were asking for was like, it was depending on like which, depending on like the department and like what specific care they were providing. But like, if you were in like the intensive care unit, it would be mandated that you can only have like 1 or 2 patients, down from like 10, right? Like radical change. And so they voted overwhelmingly, I think it was like 90-something% to maybe like 95, it was up there, to strike. However, they have not strike. They have, I think they're still in the process. The threat of a strike was enough to do, to win enough of their demands from the administration that I think they have managed to reach a tentative agreement and they're voting on it right now. And there's it's like this interesting divide between the nurses who are like, there are some who are really proud of what they did, as they should be. I think I'm not particularly well versed on the agreement, but it did include enforceable staffing protections that are significantly stronger than what they had previously, which was basically nothing. It was like a handshake deal of like, we're gonna try to, give you ratios. But it's not as good as it could have been. And I think this really came from, I think there has been from the nurses I've spoken to, there has been a big question about like whether or not NISNA was truly strike ready and like what that means, because it was, they were covering.
No one understands what
a couple different
say right now. I don't want to call them a woman. I don't want to misgender anything like that. But like, no one understands what they're saying.
And so I don't know, I want to just talk about this because I think it's important when we're working. I think DSA works best in coalition. And so but like these relationships that can always be kind of.
Okay, pop quiz for the chat. I want to try to break up this. I don't even know what the fuck this is. Why do they snap instead of clap? Who knows? This is a test. I will judge you harshly if you don't know the answer. Unless you're new to Socialism Saturday, and then you might not know the answer. But for my Socialism Saturday veterans, why do they snap instead of clapping? What is the point? Yes, exactly. Snapping is less triggering. This is a real thing. This has been instituted at universities. It's clapping is triggering. Clapping is triggering to these people. Exactly. Well done. Everyone who got it right gets a gold star. Or a red star, as it were.
Complicated.
No, it would be gold, wouldn't it? It'd be gold on red.
With unions, who like are site places of struggle, but are like also deeply bureaucratic. Yeah, and so I think it's always interesting to see like how we relate to that and how can we respond to that, especially as like an outside organization. And yeah, so I'm running out of time and I want to give you guys more time for discussion. So I think I guess the
you all get a gold
question I want to pose to you is that like both in the Ain't I a Woman campaign and the NISNA strike, we're dealing with these campaigns are led and grounded in like the workers, right? The people who are enduring these conditions on a daily basis. And DSA is also often a coalition partner to support these stakeholders, right? And so I don't know. I guess I wanted you guys to talk about in your campaigns, like how have you brought stakeholders into the work? Like how are you? And it doesn't necessarily just have to be workers, but like how are we bringing patients? How are we bringing people of color? You know, how are we making sure that these campaigns are being led and organized by the people who are most affected? But you know. So yeah, please get back into your groups and like discuss. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Oh, they have to do a discussion again?
So I want to talk about these campaigns.
Oh, another discussion? What the hell? We're gonna have time to watch lots of their content tonight, guys, with all these discussions. All right, let's fast forward. Let's get to that point where they're talking again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah? Who wants to? Yeah, you in the orange shirt.
Hi, I'm Georgia Cheever. The Pittsburgh DSA has been working with SWAT Pittsburgh, which is a specialist outreach project with Pittsburgh. And one of the things that we've been doing in solidarity with them is doing some court watching or attending what they call Pride Court, which is a prostitution conversion court. Part of that sort of coalition and working in solidarity with them is both attending court to show that, you know, we're there to support the sex workers and just to generally provide that support, but also because the court has been known to do some illegal nonsense, like taking the presiding judge will take people into his private chambers to make the court ruling. That's not legal. So being there to sort of call them out, and also because the sex workers themselves and the people that are part of SWAP often can't attend court because they will be identified. People, they'll call them out. The person that I've communicated with has like been harassed by the bailiffs. So being able to go for them and do that work for them so that they don't have to be exposed to that environment, I think is valuable coalition work.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it is very important for us to figure out like how we can support and show solidarity with people who are more marginalized than like the average demographics of DSA. Like we should be, as a mostly white organization, like using our privilege.
Oh shit!
Diversify our ranks.
What quiet part did this person that's obviously non-binary just say out loud? What did they just say out loud? Pop quiz in the chat. What did they just say out loud? She really did just say that. She really did. What did she say? Let's rewind.
It's important for us to figure out like how we can support and show solidarity with people who are more marginalized than like the average demographics of DSA. Like,
hang on, let me rewind a little bit more. Sorry.
Been harassed by the bailiffs.
It's not just her.
So
DSA, Democratic Socialists of America.
them,
Listen to what she just said.
For them, so that they don't have to be exposed to that environment. I think it's valuable coalition work.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it is very important for us to figure out like how we can support and show solidarity with people who are more marginalized than like the average demographics of DSA. Like we should be, as a mostly white organization, like using our privilege.
She just admitted that the Democratic Socialists of America are mostly white and privileged, which essentially means the Democratic Socialists of America are a bunch of rich, white, privileged children that are pretending to represent the poor, the oppressed, the marginalized working class proletariat. That was beautiful. That was so fucking great. It would be even more funny if these people weren't winning. Exactly, Nick. The DSA is mostly white and privileged. Exactly. They're LARPing. They're LARPing as socialists and they're still fucking winning because the right is so incompetent that these people are still beating them. All right, you guys want me to clip it? All right, we'll go back. I'll clip it. I'll clip it. I'll clip it for all of you. Hang on. Let me just get the clip set up. Hang on. I gotta configure my recording because I was doing some other recording later. All right, we're gonna clip it.
For them and do that work for them so that they don't have to be exposed to that environment. I think valuable coalition work.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it is very important for us to figure out like how we can support and show solidarity with people who are more marginalized than like the average demographics of DSA. Like we should be, as a mostly white organization, like using our privilege as we try to diversify our ranks and like show. I mean, that's what like solidarity is right? It's like not. It's putting ourselves on the line in support of others. All right, great. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else want to share what
Got it.
we're talking about?
Clip.
Yeah, don't be shy. Yeah, Robbie, all the way in the back.
We didn't get to talk about some of our coalition work, but one example that I think can happen sometimes even in a really successful collaboration is when Long Beach was looking at sanctuary city legislation and legal defense fund and all of that. The coalition was really excited to have DSA there because we're really loud and we're very brown in Long Beach and we're like very unafraid and like all of that sort of stuff is really useful. And then once the legislation got passed, all the meetings started being at 2 o'clock. So nobody who had a job could go because they felt like now it was back in an institutional framework. And so it was no longer the streets, right? And so we weren't useful to them anymore. And so these little things, I think also like we need to negotiate or just like navigate in our coalition relationships of like our principles, right? Like we had meetings on evenings and weekends because we have jobs, and like we switch between evenings and weekends and day and like online because we have people who work on evenings and weekends, right? And so that's not a principle that institutional players think about usually, right? And a lot of unions, like Jen was saying, or a lot of nonprofits are very like professionalized, and so they see. So like the relationships are different, the internal culture is different, and often the end goals are different. And so I think in a lot of cases that I've seen from around the country, it's really important to be clear about what our principles are and our desires are when we go into the coalition, or we'll be bad partners because we're not honest with ourselves about what we want, and we're not setting like, when do we step away? What are we willing to do? What are we not willing to do? And like, we want to think about, we want to be very intentional before we get pulled into like institutional politics, right? You absolutely have to be in that world, but to be functional as a socialist, but it's different, and we just need to be aware of that. We need to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's also, especially when working in coalition, it's important to ask ourselves, like, what can we do that they can't? During the primary, DSA was able to go and bird dog Cuomo, right, in ways that, like, NYSA was never going to do, right? And so that may be, they may not love that, but, like, it's a way that we can push the conversation forward. Anyway, yeah, you in the back, you had your hand raised.
So we actually also did talk about this, but what I was going to say is I'm my dress museum on Tuesday, and I think we got our we just did the open school strike, which we were super active in. But I think one of the things that I took away from coalitions in that sense is that it's very easy to get to work with the top players of the union, but it's actually super important to remember the rank and file. So I think what we did really successfully in that effort is that while we were working with the union, it is often really
hard because they were making these decisions and like we had to make decisions on the fly about how to feed 37,000 kids and they were like not telling us like key information, you know? And so we were like trying to like not bring that, but one of the things that we did really well was start to like go far in school, go work with teachers, you know? So at the end, even though the tentative agreement or like the agreement that was passed was really controversial, the teachers themselves might have been.
It sounds like they're having another session in the same room, and I can hear two different people talking in my ear right now. I cannot understand what that person asking the question is saying, so hopefully they stop talking soon.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, the A9 Women campaign. This is actually my first time hearing about it, and I'm definitely going to look more into it. When I heard the phrase A9 Woman, I instantly thought about Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth is a historical speech, Sojourner Truth, and it just reminds me that that Black women, brown women have always had the brunt of this dehumanization when it comes to this work. So having groups like DSA, the allyships and support and the coalition is very imperative to this work, because if we're going to be socialists and we want to move this work forward, we have to align ourselves with each other. We have to see, where our privilege lies and use it to our advantage, because it's very important, because a cop confronting me is going to look differently from a cop confronting a white woman. So thank you for talking about the A9 Woman campaign, and I encourage everyone to look into that campaign and support. Because as the person said back there, like, you have to be on the ground, you have to talk to the teachers, you have to, be involved. So that's just very important to do, because it is hard working with unions. Even though they're there to support workers, a lot of times it is very bureaucratic, and that's very historical. So my name is Arica Hurst. I go by Hershey, and I will be talking about the war on drugs, restitution, and recovery. I just wanted to say the definition of restitution, because I think that that's what all of our groups here are working on restitution, which is the restoration of something lost or stolen to the proper owner. So we us as humans, that's being stolen from us, our inalienable rights, they're being stolen from us as humans, as women, as non-binary people.
See, they're all non-binary.
We're being dehumanized, and we can see this happening to people that are dealing with abortion, people that are dealing with sex work and health home aid work. We're being dehumanized in all these categories. So restoration for all of us. The war on drugs, and particularly for me as a Black woman, and organizing in Philadelphia and being able to have the privilege to go to other spaces like Arizona and Nevada and organize there with immigrants and what I call Black and brown folks who are most affected by these issues, but aren't closely connected to the policy making that will affect them. So we have a little bit of time, so I'm just going to read this off some notes I've been writing since I found out I was going to be a part of this panel. So the matter of war on drugs is a matter of race. Again, being a commodity in this country, the war on drugs. Because it goes back way before the Nixon era. But that's when policy started to come about in the 90s. We had these terms being used called super predators. So we all know by now that the war on drugs was manufactured by policy making in the latter half of the 80s into 90s, that intentionally targeted Black and Hispanic communities. Countless research has been done, so we're not lacking in research. You can pull up any research and find that, yes, Black men were primarily the target from research done by these political scientists. One of them, by the name of a man who actually is a professor at the University of Penn, who coined the term super predator, John J. DiIulio Jr., who was a political scientist, professor at UPenn, and wrote that these super predators, they're going to grow. So he stated this all back in the early 90s and said that super predators are young juvenile criminals, more than likely young black men, who will do what comes naturally: murder, rape, rob, assault, burglarize, deal deadly drugs.
God damn, that seems a little racist, doesn't it?
So this was a political scientist that was stating that this is going to be a boom of young Black males, and by 2005 it's going to be a bloodbath because these young Black men are just going to go out and pillage. This is not new. This is very familiar. Post-Civil War, lynchings of Black men increased because of this ominous storytelling of, at the time, what I assume to be cisgender white men who said that Black men are going to go out and rape pure white women. And as we know, that's false, because actually Black women being raped in birthing farms. So when we look at this now in 2019, and there's a very important election coming up, the 2020 election, we have to look at the historical context in which we talk about Black and brown people and how they're demonized through policy, and how can allyship and coalitions build power in these areas where people are being criminalized and dehumanized, all on the basis of color of skin. And so I like, even though this is a very jury, topic, like I said, I'm from Southwest Philadelphia and I grew up here. I've had a countless number of friends, families, associates that are still to this day incarcerated because of the war on drugs. So we have to look at this historical context and see why is policy still being introduced to this day that really focuses on this. So nothing's really changing. Nothing's changing at all.
Hang on, had to unmute myself. I'm eating some popcorn because I haven't really eaten today, and so thank you, Murphy's Pool, for the snack basket. I really do appreciate it. So here's something that I'm going to say that I think people might find controversial or not agree with. I'm probably going to agree with a lot of what this woman is saying, because I think that the war on drugs is bullshit. I think that most drugs should be completely decriminalized. I think that we should release everyone in prison who's in prison for like an offense like marijuana, but like pretty much all victimless crimes, I don't think they should be in prison. I think that the justice system is completely fucked up when it comes to drugs. I think that that it is a really big problem. And so on this person's turn, if she's focusing in on the war on drugs and how that's a problem, I'm probably going to agree with a lot of what she has to say, and I just want to prepare everyone for that, because I just, I don't listen, man, a broken clock is right twice a day. And she might actually be, this might actually be one of those cases where she's actually a libertarian and just doesn't know it because she's gotten sucked into this socialism insanity, because she just wants to fight this particular battle, and she doesn't realize that she has more people on her team on the other side. So it seems like a lot of you agree with me in the chat, and I think that that's actually, it's important to find common ground with your enemies where you can.
Only thing that's changing now is that there's a different face on the people that are now using drugs increasingly, and now there's a lot of support happening for these folks. And that's important, because I don't want to see people dead on the street. I'd rather people be safe. I'd rather people get the support they need, but I can't, as a Black organizer, just look at that.
So Barb says in the chat, so do we still need to listen to it? I'd like to listen to it, because I don't want to just look for places that we disagree with these people. We should probably also understand where we have common ground with these people. So I'm going to keep listening to it. Guys, I have a whole bunch of other stuff we can watch after this one. So we're going to have other options too, but I do want to listen to what they have to say.
And say, that's great, end of story. I'm still in my community where people are dealing with the war on drugs. And I think all of us here, I think we kind of came to the conclusion, like, this is trauma in all of these areas. Trauma is happening. Trauma is happening, and no one's doing anything about it. They're just incarcerating more people. They're dehumanizing more people, and policies are being constructed. So just to hop back a little bit on the timeline, in the 90s, after the super predator research came out and people ran with it, there were about 40 states in the United States. So that's half the country, over half the country, that now are passing, that pass laws to charge juveniles as adults in this country. So juveniles, 16, 17-year-olds that are being charged as adults for drug offenses. For drug offenses. So at 16, in a lot of countries, so in Arizona, in California, Florida, Michigan, in Arizona, a state government report for fiscal year 2015 found that 224 youth directly filed and judicially waived into the adult system. So these are policies. There's what I would call like your justice loopholes. So these transfer laws are supporting juveniles being transferred to states where they can be tried as adults. And that's alarming, because then you have a whole generation of black males, women, non-binary folks just being targeted at really high rates, and then being put into a system that is not supporting them, is not dealing with their trauma, is not dealing with the fact that their neighborhoods had no resources, and that the only resources for these black and brown communities for males was drugs, and for young women was sex work, right? Because there's no jobs there. There's no policy. Like, we have to, when we put this thing in this neighborhood, we have to make sure it's trauma-informed care there, that there are jobs there, and that it's counselors there. No, the exact opposite are happening. Right down the street on 47th and I believe 47th and Fairmount, around there's a juvenile justice center. You know, why was that put there and not a healing?
I agree wholeheartedly with this. Private prisons should not
and
exist.
murder that happens in the city of Philadelphia. So I think that when you have the privilege and your groups talking about what you can do as a coalition and how you can enforce policy or affect change, you got to look at the people that are most affected by it and what policies are being passed and how we can use our privilege in ways to shape things up, and how this is most affecting the people of black and brown communities, and how their still trauma is being not addressed but being dehumanized. People are being targeted mainly just because they're black or they're brown or they look suspicious. And it's upsetting because a lot of times we are left out of the conversations of the policymaking. We're left out of the policymaking, and a lot of times we're left out of the coalition building because of different barriers like time, like how many black and brown mothers or fathers can actually like stop their day and like, I'm going to go to this meeting. So how can we make our coalitions more, I guess, open to people that look like me, that want to be part of it?
Okay, here's where we're going to start to have some disagreement. You're telling me that you can't make time in your schedule to go to a meeting that you care about because you're black? That doesn't really... I disagree. I'm sorry. We make time for things we care about. Everyone is busy. It's not just black and brown people who are busy. Everyone has a mix of priorities. You make time for things you care about, and don't tell me that black and brown people can't be part of coalition building in socialist movements. If that's true, it says more about the socialist movements than it does about anything else.
Conversation, we can't be there. Can they call in? Can they check in? Can they stop by? A lot of times in college, I work 2 different jobs, so I use my professor's office hours. Or there are different hours where people can check in with DSA coalition leaders about, hey, this is happening in my community, and I'm not able to be at the meetings, but I want to be a part of this. I see you guys affecting change, and I love it. That's why I'm like, DSA, you guys are my allies. And I think we need to look more at allyship and look more about how we can like open up and like stop the barriers and open up. How are we addressing these state senators, legislators that aren't addressing wage theft? Right, that's illegal. That's fuck. Right, right. I thought slavery ended. I guess not, because that's slavery. If you're working, you're not getting paid. That's slavery. So we have to call out these things for one, and we have to look at our privileges in a way that can drop down the walls and open up these barriers so that people that look like me and that maybe identify similarly to me as marginalized, they can be part of these conversations without feeling like, I don't know what to do. Obviously, there's no legislative support. City council is a joke. Different agencies that are supported by government funding, those are being cut. So how can I, as a coalition or a chapter, bring in these people that maybe don't look like me, but I'm here as a socialist fighting for these things because I want these people to be a part of it. So I don't have any questions, but if people have questions for me, I got a lot of my information from sentencingproject.org. Sentencingproject.org.
I wanted to add one thing that I was thinking. So when you were saying about how politicians are coming up with these policies, but who are they? Are they actually bringing like Black and brown people into that conversation? It makes me think about Elizabeth Warren's recent policy for addressing Black mortality rate in the United States, where about punishing hospitals, and it's like, did you actually have a conversation with the people that this affects? Because that, anybody, I feel like, can tell her that that's not going to work. So I feel like that's a good example of what you brought up, because it's like, who did you talk to?
Yeah, who did you talk to? Do they look like the people that are most, do they look like the people most affected by this issue? The question is like, if this is like not like a big trigger for you, then you're probably like most not affected by this issue. And you probably should use your power in a way that brings someone that's triggered or most affected by the issue to the table. How can I leverage my
You have
privilege in
no
a way
business
that I can
telling
bring somebody
someone
that is
how
most
to
affected
use
by
their
this
time
issue
and their
to the
energy.
table
I'm
instead of
sorry.
like
That's
standing
not
on my
your
high
time
horse
and
or my
energy. It's
platform
their
and being like,
time and
I
energy.
know what to do. You actually don't, and that's okay. Because the man that thinks he knows everything knows nothing. So we really have to really have to, like, I like that you brought that up. Because, a lot of people rally behind all these people that are running, and I just want to say, who looks like the people affected by this? And are those people actually bringing those people to the table? Because if you're introducing legislation that is clearly problematic or making people feel more guilty about the issue, then that's not helpful. I took some quotes from the website, and I'm just gonna like finish it off with just kind of saying that quote and then just asking them just a rhetorical question. But the criminal justice system on the jurisdictions in these different states that use these transfer laws erases the jurisdiction when they are arrested. And when they say they, the young Black men or Black women, non-binary, or when these young people of color are arrested, the law totally goes out the window, is basically what it's saying. That the law that protects these people totally goes out the window. And
she's not a real socialist. And you can tell that because she's like, she gets confused. She's like, Black men and women and non-binary. She's not a real socialist. She's not using their language. Okay, she might consider herself to be a socialist. Maybe I shouldn't say she's not a real socialist, but she's not fully indoctrinated into this ideology. It's important to be able to tell the difference between these two things. Those two people on the right, the one in the middle on the panel and the one with the red bandana, they're fully indoctrinated. They're real socialists. This Black woman is talking about the drug war, and she thinks that makes her a socialist, and she's trying to use the language, but she's not there yet. That to me actually spells opportunity, to be honest. I mean, there were so many people in the chat who said, drug war is a bad idea. Okay, with someone like her, you can build alliances with people like her. You can work with people like her. And then over time, you talk to them and you let them know that the democratic socialists are not the only ones who care about this issue. People like her are convertible. You can wake people like her up. It is very important that people be able to tell the difference. You need to know who's a true believer and who is someone that has potential to be woken up.
I would just like to point out that there was a case where this young white male raped a girl outside, did not serve any jail time at all, but he raped someone. Just think about if that was a young Black male that raped someone behind a dumpster and committed that same crime.
She'd been in great at forecast. It'd be great.
Black male would go away, without serving any time or just a probation. So these policies that happen in these courtrooms, we look at the criminal justice system in a way that, are we actually looking at the law, or should we actually be looking at the bias that happens in courtrooms? Policy can create, policy can do whatever, in theory it works, right? But in practicum, it comes down to people's biases. And how can we, as a collective fighting for what we believe in as socialist groups of people, socialist like-minded people, how can we look at bias in courtrooms and legislation when it comes to policy making? So thank you all.
Yes, do Q&A. Q&A is the best.
Anyone who have questions for our wonderful panelists?
Can I say something? Just something I've been thinking about as we were talking about mass incarceration, is that like all incarceration is a health risk.
Yes.
Like, and there's this fantastic book I just read that you should check out. It's about Rikers Island specifically, which is the jail in New York, but it's called Life and Death on Rikers Island. It is frustratingly not a prison abolition book. Like, I don't know how you could go through this book and not think that like the system is unfixable. But it's the chief medical officer on Rikers Island talking about just the utter systematic failures of Rikers and how I mean all of the health risks of incarceration basically come down that incarceration is torture.
Yes.
It's just torture,
Yes.
other than straight, whether that is, solitary confinement, just a brutal environment where correction officers are able to inflict violence without any repercussion, or able to goad other prisoners into violence with zero repercussion. It's a chaotic, terrible environment. They systematically just deny healthcare to people, just for reasons. And so I think as we're talking about decriminalization, mass incarceration, decriminalized sex work, like all of these things tie in. I wish I had time to talk about the Save Balance Psych Ward, because mental health and incarceration are deeply linked to each other. And all of these, mass incarceration is a health issue.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things happening in Philadelphia, but I would like to point out there's one campaign called Close the Creek campaign. Close the Creek, and it's led by Just Leadership, and it's about closing the House of Corrections in Philadelphia. And when that's closed, money can come from that, and that money, Mayor Kenny promised to take that money and invest it into community. So how can we address all the trauma that happens because when people are incarcerated, it's just not the person that's incarcerated that's traumatized. All right, there are people the family members, the friends, the traveling upstate. How much does that cost? So there's a lot that goes into it, but there are things that can be done when we come together and we support campaigns like Close the Creek and Just Leadership. Shout out to them. And just thinking about ways that what's happening right now, because it can become a topic where you feel like you can do nothing. But there are different campaigns you can kind of support that are effective when you are resilient, when you're like, I'm gonna do what I need to do and be on the ground. Question?
This is towards Jen and her work on care workers and home care workers. My grandfather suffered and died due to dementia, and when he was at home, he had to be observed all day, and I was burden put upon my grandmother and my uncles who were nearby, and me. And the work just got too much, and we had to put him in a care home.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot with like social reproduction, and like that women are like the shock absorbers of austerity politics. So when we aren't able to have home health aides in the office, so most of that work falls on the feminized people, or they're pushed out into institutions which are even more expensive than home health workers, right? And are alienating from people. It takes people out of community. It puts them in institutions when it's really cheaper to just have people help at home. And I would love to talk to you more. I think we're getting signs from the back that we need to wrap up, but let's talk afterwards.
So I know that sexual liberation is great, and I want to be also inclusive of.
They're talking about sexual liberation.
How about those others who are in trade, who don't see it as empowering and see it as them being objectified, and that we also see places where it was decriminalized and legalized, such as in New Zealand. We see that
They're talking about sex work.
And they were not empowered from the beginning and are still not empowered when it was legalized. So how are we also being inclusive of those others who don't want to report from the global south?
Oh, I don't know much about sex work and criminal religion of it. I just know people are constantly left out of the conversations all the time. So
Could you be more specific about, because just because I wasn't quite understanding, like, in what way they were left out and what was done?
Well, I think like if you think about economics, right, and think about policy, if sex work is legalized, that would show people that it's okay to buy sex and that's fine. But I wonder if the demand will increase and in a racialized and gendered world, where will the supply come from? If women who are privileged don't want to do that work anymore.
Just to add on to what Princess was saying, so she brought up the example of New Zealand. In New Zealand, over 80% of girls that are involved in the sex trade are Maori women. To the point where in New Zealand, Maori women are referred to as the forgotten women, the lost women, because 16-year-old girls don't reach past 16 years old because they're sentenced. So I think that's what we're trying to get at, right? Like these women were not consulted. These women were never at the table. These girls are already their land.
They're talking about sex work, and I don't think that's really relevant to our interests here today. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that there because we can move on and watch some other things as well. I don't know what this panel is about. Let me just click into it and see if it says she spoke at the Socialist Feminist Convert. So they're not giving a topic of this keynote. I don't know. Okay, let me ask you this: do you guys want to take a chance? And let me put a poll in the chat on YouTube because there's 2 videos we could potentially watch. Which one? Do you want to watch mystery keynote video, which is going to be like this mystery socialist keynote that we don't know what it's about? Or we could watch Sophie Lewis, who's showing up to talk about full surrogacy now. And that is basically a book that she wrote about about how all birth should be through surrogacy and we should get rid of the biological family. So which one would you guys rather do? Would you rather do mystery keynote or would you rather do surrogacy? Let me know in the chat. We can watch whichever one you guys want to watch. And we'll get a little double feature here today. Just as a reminder, we are doing movie night tomorrow in my supporter Discord. We are going to be watching Scrooged, the Christmas classic with Bill Murray. We're going to be doing that on Sunday at 8 p.m. Also, there might be a Sunday special stream tomorrow around 3 or 4 p.m. I got to work out some stuff for the Sunday special stream. I got to figure some stuff out. So I'm not guaranteeing it. I hope we can make it happen. I don't know yet. If we do, it's basically going to be Spy Stream is what it is. And so more information on that, if it happens, will come tomorrow, but we are definitely doing movie night in my supporter Discord at 8 p.m. tomorrow. And if you want to join us for that, there are a couple ways you can join. Number one, you could become a member of this here YouTube channel. If you become a member on my channel, I will send out a link to the members of the channel in the community page to the supporter Discord tomorrow. You could also go to activelyunwoke.com/support. The link is in the description below. You can join my Patreon or you could join my locals, and that will get you access to my supporter Discord. I will be sending out the link tomorrow afternoon, and you can join us to watch Scrooged tomorrow evening. And we do weekly movie nights in my supporter Discord. There are some other perks you're going to get as well. Yeah. All right, it looks like surrogacy is winning the day. Now, I'm curious. How many of you in the chat have watched Socialism Surrogacy with me already? Have you seen the surrogacy? Hang on, I'm going to do another poll. How many of you in the chat have already watched some of this socialism surrogacy stuff with me? Because we've watched it a couple times. And I'm just curious because the surrogacy stuff, this is probably the most dystopian thing that we can watch is the surrogacy stuff. It's really crazy. It's next level insanity. What these people want to do is abolish the biological family and have all children in society born via surrogacy. This is like in Brave New World. It's like in The Giver. It's like in in Logan's Run. Any number of dystopian movies have covered this topic. And it looks like about half of you have watched Surrogacy with me before. Excellent. So half of you are in for a treat tonight. I would recommend that if you have not yet watched Surrogacy with me, now's going to be the very best time for you to go get a drink of some. If you drink, if you partake, if you imbibe, if you will, go pour yourself a stiff one. You're going to thank me later. I promise you, you will thank me later. All right, let's get into Sophie Lewis.
Millennium goals to stop the carnage. In the United States, almost 1,000 people die while doing childbirth each year, and another 65,000 nearly die. This situation is social, not simply natural. Things are like this for political and economic reasons. We made them this way. Pregnancy undoubtedly has its pleasures. Natality is unique, and that is why, even as others suffer deeply from their coerced participation in pregnancy, many people
All right, I know the volume is soft, okay? This was obviously recorded on an iPhone. Here's what I'm going to ask everyone to do. We all need to work together here, guys, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my microphone volume down. I'm turning my microphone volume down. Okay, I'm going down, I'm going down, I'm going down. And what I need everyone to do, we all need to participate in this, is I need everyone to turn the volume on their personal computer up. I cannot adjust the volume on any more on this video. It's just the way it goes. I wish I could, but I can't. But what I can do is adjust the volume on my microphone down, and then you turn your personal volume up, and then hopefully we'll be around about where we should be. All right? Is everyone ready? Let me know in the chat when you're ready to go. I don't want to hear any complaints. I'm doing the best I can with the volume issue. But they recorded this on an iPhone, so it's what sometimes we have to suffer through less than stellar production quality. All right, everyone is ready to go.
excluded from the experience for whatever reason, be they cis, trans, or non-binary, feel deeply bereft. But even so, and even in full recognition of the sense of the sublime that people experience in gestating, it is remarkable that there isn't more consistent support for research into alleviating the problem of pregnancy.
The problem
the
of
miracle
pregnancy.
that transpires in pregnancy, the production of that number more than one and less than two, receives more idealizing lip service than it does respect. Certainly, the creation of new proto-personhood in the uterus is a marvel that artists have engaged for millennia and psychoanalytic philosophers for almost a century. None of us should need reminding. That's a bit that I had to rewrite because I keep making this claim that most of us don't need reminding. I don't know why I thought that. That we are each of us the blinking, thinking, pulsating products of gestational work and its equally laborious aftermaths. That's true. That's what we are. Yet in 2017, a reader and thinker as compendious as Maggie Nelson can still state, semi-incredulously, but with a strong case behind her, that philosophical writing about actually doing gestating constitutes an absence in culture. What particularly fascinates me about the subject is pregnancy's morbidity, the little discussed ways that, biophysically speaking, gestating is an unconscionably destructive business. The basic mechanics, according to evolutionary biologist Socialism Saturday, have evolved in our species in a manner that can only be described as a ghastly fluke. Scientists have discovered, by experimentally putting placental cells in a mouse carcass, that the active cells of pregnancy rampage unless aggressively contained through every tissue they touch. Capiaco was not citing these studies when she remarked that having cancer is like having a baby, but she was unconsciously channeling their findings. The same goes for Elena Ferrante's protagonist in The Days of Abandonment, who reports I was like a lump of food that my children chewed without stopping, a cud made of a living material that continually amalgamated and softened its living substance to allow two greedy bloodsuckers to nourish themselves. The genes that are active in embryonic development are also implicated in cancer, and that is not the only reason why pregnancy among Homo sapiens, in Saturday's account, perpetrates a kind of biological bloodbath. Bloodbath is kind of cool because etymologically amnion actually means bowl in which the blood of slaughtered lambs is caught. So like a literal bloodbath. It is a specific, functionally rare type of placenta we have to work with, the hemocorial placenta, which determines that this entity that Chikako Takashita calls the mother fetus tears itself apart inside. Rather than simply interfacing with the gestator's biology through a limited filter or contenting itself with freely proffered secretions, this placenta digests its way into its host's arteries, securing full access to most tissues. So mammals whose placentas don't breach the walls of the womb in this way can simply abort or reabsorb unwanted fetuses at any stage of a pregnancy. For them, life goes on almost as normal during a pregnancy. Conversely, a human cannot rip away a placenta in the event of a change of heart.
Wait,
or
did
say,
Sophie
a
block
drought
you?
Or an outbreak of war without risk of lethal hemorrhage. Our embryo hugely enlarges and paralyzes the wider arterial system supplying it, while at the same time elevating hormonally the blood pressure and sugar supply. And I haven't even yet touched on postnatal PTSD. No wonder philosophers have asked whether gestators are...
So basically, what's going on right now is she's trying to convince everyone that they really don't want to be pregnant in the first place because pregnancy in humans is just so awful and, dare we say, even unnatural. And that is why we should have all children born via surrogacy, because she's actually trying to convince people that pregnancy is unnatural and awful and almost inhuman.
Persons. It seems impossible that a society would let such grisly things happen on a regular basis to entities endowed with legal standing. Given the biology of hemocorial placentation, the fact that so many of us endowed with viable wombs are walking around in a state of physical implantability, no pill, no IUD, ought by rights to be regarded as the most remarkable thing. To be sure, it has been relatively straightforward in many parts of the world to stop gestating, at least at the very beginning of the process, simply because a perhaps even unnoticed miscarriage occurred, or because the gestator has had access through a knowledgeable
The
friend
gestator.
to abortifacients. In 2008, an artist, alive...
She's not calling them women. She's not even calling them pregnant people. She is calling them gestators.
Eliza Schwartz self-inseminated with fresh sperm and then self-aborted over and over again every month for 9 months by swallowing pills. It was a kind of art project. I'm curious what that perverse stop-start labor experiment was like. Schwartz's true, non-defensive thoughts on the matter are unfortunately obliterated by a wall of right-wing bellowing. Unsurprisingly, given that one would expect to feel good upon being extricated from a non-stop job one isn't willing to do, in general, the experience of termination generates feelings of relief and cared-forness. As Erica Miller evidences in Happy Abortions, sustained negative emotions are extremely rare in connection with having an abortion.
Holy shit.
I probably shouldn't be...
Someone actually wrote a book called Happy Abortions. Is that a real thing? Hang on, let me just look at... I'm going to Amazon real quick. Sorry, guys. I want to look this up. Happy Abortions. Are you kidding me? Hang on. Happy Abortions. This is a real book. It only has 1 rating on Amazon, so I think that's probably a good thing. It's called Happy Abortions, Our Body in the Era of Choice. And it's like a woman's body with an X on the stomach.
tomorrow I have to go to New York, and there's a focus on the family demonstration where they're going to beam a 4-dimensional fetal ultrasound in Times Square, and all the, you probably know this, the abortion rights organizations are all going to come out and tell them to fuck off. It really scares me. Gestational fix. Pregnancy has long been substantially
Seriously?
techno-fixed already when it comes to those whose lives really matter. Under capitalism and imperialism, safer or at least medically supported gestation has typically been the privilege of the upper classes, and the high-end care historically afforded to the rich when they gestate their own young has lately been supplemented by a technology that absorbs 100% of the damage from the consumer's point of view. The human labor of a gestational surrogate. Surrogacy, in that sense, as news media still report, began booming globally in 2011. Around 2016, the industry began suffering a series of setbacks. Thailand and Nepal banned it altogether for the foreseeable future, and other major hubs, India, Cambodia, Mexico, legislated against all but altruistic heterosexual surrogacy arrangements. Nevertheless, there are still privately registered, profit-making infertility clinics on every continent, listing surrogates for hire who will remain, so they say, genetically entirely unrelated to the babies that consumers carry away at the end of the process. For just as the Kanye commentators predicted, surrogacy bans do not halt, but actually fuel the baby trade, rendering gestational workers far more vulnerable than before. Surrogacy bans uproot, isolate, and criminalize gestational workers, driving them underground and often into foreign lands, where they risk prosecution alongside their bosses and brokers far away from their support networks. In July 2018, 33 pregnant Cambodians were detained and charged in Phnom Penh, together with their Chinese boss, for human trafficking offenses. Separately, one Mumbai-based infertility specialist began recruiting surrogate workers in Kenya immediately after India's Supreme Court decision against commercial and homosexual surrogacy. Through IVF, he implants the Kenyans with embryos belonging to his gay clients. Pregnant, those contractors are flown back to Nairobi after 24 weeks monitoring in India. The babies are birthed in designated hospitals in Nairobi where clients can pick them up, and the doctor maintains that he's not broken Indian law because he's not interacted with gay clients within that territory. All he has provided technically is IVF for Kenyan healthcare seekers. The work. In other words, clinicians simply jump through legal loopholes by moving surrogate mothers across borders, exposing surrogate mothers to greater risks, while expanding and diversifying their business partnerships worldwide. The trend towards commercial surrogacy does not constitute, then, a qualitative transformation in the mode of biological reproduction that currently destroys, as those aforementioned mortality statistics suggest, so many adults' lives. I do focus on the adults in my book. In fact, capitalist biotech does nothing at all.
How much you want to
solve the
bet she
problem of
hates
pregnancy
kids?
per se, because that is not the problem it is addressing. It is responding exclusively to demand for genetic parenthood, to which it applies.
Hang on, I want to address something Gray Pilled said. You must have a good cleansing routine. I get black pilled by stuff like this. I was black pilled a long time ago, bro. This stuff is just the icing on the cake. I was black pilled a long time ago. Want an even bigger black pill? These people are winning. Every time you want an even bigger black pill, remind yourself that these people are winning. The conservative right sucks so badly that these people are kicking their ass. They're kicking all of our asses, to be honest. But it's mostly the fecklessness of the Republican Party and the conservative right that is allowing these people to win. The libertarians don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers. But the conservatives and the Republicans do, and they do nothing. And then these people just like it's like a cakewalk for them. That's the biggest red pill. Ain't nothing we can do to stop them.
The logic of outsourcing. While the development remains uneven and tentative, it is clear that what capitalism is proposing by alienating and globalizing gestational surrogacy in this way is, as usual, an option involving moving the problem around. Pregnancy work is not so much disappearing or getting easier as crashing through various regulatory barriers onto an open market. Let the poor do the dirty work wherever they are cheapest or most convenient to enroll. And no wonder, given that the ground for such a development was already being laid as early as the late 19th century, when large swathes of the colonial upper class, frequently women-led eugenics movement in Europe and North America, argued that the best way to realize pregnancy's promise, namely a thriving future race achieved through sexual virtue and white supremacist hygiene, was for the state to economically discipline all sexual activity unconducive to that horizon. As good social democrats, these feminist progressives wanted a nation state.
Gertrude Ann, truer words have never been
shelter,
spoken.
Clothe, educate, and train the gestational laborers present within its territory, and especially the products of that gestational labor. Since this was then and remains now a costly sounding proposition, a set of enduring ideas and policies were propagated around the turn of the century, according to which, as far as metropolitan proletarians are concerned, having babies spells financial irresponsibility and surefire ruin in and of itself, especially out of wedlock. The same discouragement applied, more or less, to non-white Italian, Irish, Arab at the time, immigrants on the Eastern American seaboard. And lumpen proletarian populations in the colonies, notably India, face more hands-on methods, including famously sterilization. Meanwhile, curiously for families of the capitalist class, having babies represents a virtuous and a vital investment, guaranteeing their and the very economy's good fortunes. It's been but a series of logical steps from that hegemonic notion of reproductive meritocracy to the beginnings of the pregnancy gig economy that we can glimpse to get today.
The pregnancy gig economy?
In literal ways, people make babies for others in exchange for the money required to underwrite morally as well as materially their own otherwise barely justifiable baby having. It's not quite accurate, though, to say that the basic ideas of early eugenicist reproductive policy have resurfaced in late capitalism, or even to say they've survived. Rather, as W.E. Du Bois lays out in Black Reconstruction, or Dorothy Roberts in Killing the Black Body, these interlocking logics of property and subhumanity, privatization and punishment form the template that organized capitalism in the first place and sustains it as a system. Dominant liberal democratic.
She's basically suggesting that capitalism dictates that the inequities that are experienced as a result of the biological family. Does everyone get that? That makes sense. She is blaming capitalism on problems that arise, including the existence of the biological family, and also problems that arise because of the condition of pregnancy to begin with, which she calls gestating. Because everything these people argue, the root core of it is they want to get rid of capitalism. So they blame everything on capitalism.
Discourses that hype a world of post-racial values and bootstrap universality only serve to render dispossessed populations the more responsible for their trespass of being alive and having kids while Black. Stratification is self-reproducing and not designed to be resolved. It's perhaps still useful to call out contemporary iterations of eugenic common sense for their face value incoherence. Still legitimate to sort of point out the hypocrisy.
Exactly. You will own nothing,
Class and black
and you will be
motherhood
happy.
continue to come under attack. The barriers to black and working class women's access to contraception and abortion grow steadily more formidable. Obstetric care in India remains to this day among the most scant in the whole world, even though India exports and offers obstetric medical care to customers around the world. Such contradictions, we know, are part and parcel of capitalist geopolitical economy, which needs populations to extinguish in the process of making others thrive. Sharmila Rudrappa has an amazing book that shows that many of the populations in India who were sterilized are the same ones that are now being enrolled to make babies for people in the global north. It's not just life that is a sexually transmitted disease, as the old joke has it. Birth justice campaigners know, as indeed AIDS activists knew in the 80s and 90s, that it is death that sex spreads as well in the context of for-profit healthcare. However, this depressing state of affairs hasn't ever been the whole story. From Soviet mass holiday camps for pregnant comrades to Germany's inventive, albeit doomed, twilight sleep methods designed to completely erase the memory of labor pain. Human history contains a plethora of ambitious ideologies and technological experiments for universally liberating and collectivizing childbirth. It's admittedly an ambivalent record. Irene Lushtik, director of a beautiful 2013
of course.
archival
Of
film
course it
on
would.
this subject, has understandably harsh words.
They're a bunch of little Hitlers is what they are.
20th century rest camps and schools of childbirth that she discusses. But she suggests you have to hand it to them. Even the most wrong-headed of textbooks written a century ago at least stated the problem to be resolved in uncompromising terms. Quote, birth injuries are so common that nature must intend for women to be used up in the process of reproduction.
What she just said, birth injuries are so common that they must intend women be used up in the process of reproduction. They need to, in order to achieve their goals, they need to convince people that this idea is in their own best interest. They need to, they're targeting directly our survival mechanism. They're like, if you get pregnant, you can literally die. Which is, I mean, there is a hair of truth to it. There's a hair of truth. If you get in your car to drive to the store, you can literally die. If you get on an airplane to go on a vacation, you can literally die. That's what they're doing with pregnancy. Because in order to achieve their goal of all children being born via surrogacy, they have to convince people that giving up the ability to bear children is in their own best interest, because if they become pregnant, they could literally die.
Salmon dies after spawning. Well, if that's what nature intends, the early utopian midwives and medical reformers featured in that film, The Motherhood Archives, responded, then nature is an ass. The thrust of much feminist analysis has been to rescue pregnancy from the status of the natural. Why accept nature as natural? If this is what childbirth is naturally like, they reasoned, looking about them in the maternity wards of Europe and America, then it quite obviously needs to be denatured, remade.
Denatured. Hang on. Hang on. I want to listen to that again. She's saying we need to be, look at the captions, denatured. What'd she say? What childbirth is naturally like, they reasoned looking about them in, then it obviously needs to be denatured.
To rescue pregnancy from the status of the natural. Why accept nature as natural? if this is what childbirth is naturally like, they reasoned, looking about them in the maternity wards of Europe and America, then it quite obviously needs to be denatured, remade.
Wow.
Pioneering norms of fertility care based on something like cyborg self-determination.
So right now I'm flashing back to that scene in the movie 1984, but it's also in the book as well, but I'm seeing it specifically in the movie. And we watched 1984 for movie night in my supporter Discord not too long ago, and there is a scene in that movie where they're all sitting around listening to a lecture on the elimination of the female orgasm and to make it so that all babies are born via artificial insemination. They called it ArtSem in 1984, and I'm flashing back to that because it's almost like you could take what Sophie Lewis is saying right now. She's like, pregnancy is natural, but is it good? No, pregnancy is not good. You can literally die during pregnancy. And so we have to denature it because you can literally die. We have to retool nature. This is a lecture that could have been given in fucking 1984. Are you guys seeing this? Am I making this up right now? This was 3 years ago this was filmed. 3 years ago. She's still talking about this stuff today. This woman is relentless.
Has turned out to be a moving target. The exceptionality and the careworthiness of gestation remains something that had to be forcibly naturalized, spliced in against the grain of a nature whose fundamental indifference to death, injury, and suffering does not, paradoxically, come naturally to most of us. That's a bit of jiu-jitsu for you. However, many of these efforts to emancipate humanity from gestational nature,
emancipate humanity from gestational nature. Ah! I can't. I fucking can't.
Their cause as well. For instance, the turn to so-called natural childbirth, which earned such fiery contempt from Shulamith Firestone in 1970 for being bourgeois, more accurately stands for a regimen full of carefully stylized gestational labor hacks and artifices, a suite of mental and physical conditioning that can be billed as intuitive, but which nevertheless take time and skill to master. Natural childbirth has never gone entirely out of fashion and is still extremely popular among diverse social classes. And while particular sub-doctrines of natural childbirth continue to come under well-justified fire wherever they stray into mystification, the broader free birthing movement's foundational critique of just-in-time capitalist obstetrics and its colonial patriarchal history, whereby midwives, witches, and their indigenous knowledges...
Vince is making a great point in the chat. Vince says, MGTOW circles have talked about artificial wombs for years, but even they admit the technology won't come into existence without women wanting it. Well, here's the pitch for women. All the more proof that the extreme right is exactly the same as the extreme left. You've got men on the extreme right arguing for this. You've got women on the extreme left arguing for this. It's fucking horseshoe theory in action.
Were expelled from the gestational workplace is hard to fault. Few people consciously want babies to be commodities, yet baby commodities are a definite part of what gestational labor produces today. So here we are. Given the variety of organizing principles that can apply to the baby assembly line, it is ahistorical at best to claim that what we produce when we're pregnant is simply life, new life, and love. The related philosophically widespread claim that social bonds are grounded biologically in pregnancy, what some people call the 9-month head start to a relationship, is ultimately incomplete. The better question is surely head start to what? What type of social bonds are grounded by which approach to pregnancy? The fabric of the social is something we ultimately weave by taking up where gestation left off, encountering one another as the strangers we always are, adopting one another skin to skin, forming loving and abusive attachments, and ideally striving at comradeship. To say otherwise is to naturalize
Comradeship will save us all.
ironically to devalue that ideological shibboleth, the mother-fetus bond. What if we reimagined pregnancy and not just its prescribed aftermath as work under capitalism? That is, as something to be struggled in and against towards a utopian horizon, free of work and free of value. Gestational commune. Full surrogacy now. Another surrogacy is possible. To the extent that these interchangeable sentiments imply a revolutionary program, as I would like them to, I'd propose it be animated by the following invitations. Let's bring about the conditions of possibility for open source, fully collaborative gestation. Let's prefigure a way of manufacturing one another.
Look at the wordplay. Look at the wordplay that she just did. She calls surrogacy. Hang on, where is it? Where is it? Open source, fully collaborative gestation. It's not surrogacy. It's open source, collaborative gestation. Remember, language is their greatest weapon. They are always screwing with language. That's why it's so important that people listen to the language.
Let's prefigure a way of manufacturing one another non-competitively. Let's hold one another hospitably, explode notions of hereditary parentage, and multiply real loving solidarities and surrogacies. Let us build a care commune based on comradeship, a world sustained by kith and kind more than by kin. Where pregnancy is concerned, let every pregnancy be for everyone. Let us overthrow, in short, the family. It's admittedly quite hard to imagine a book by me that would do full justice to that remit. Happily, the ideas I've glossed here aren't new or original, and they will continue to be refined and concretized for years and years after this. Writing is, of course, the archetypal example of a distributed, omni-surrogated labor. While the name on the cover of this book is mine, the thoughts that gestated its unfinished contents, like the labors that gestated all the way into adulthood, the thinkers of these ongoing thoughts, are many. Authorship can only be co-authorship. Buy my book, though. Unabashedly interested in family abolition, I want us to look to wage to gestational assistance specifically, insofar as it illuminates the possibility
Gestational
of
assistance.
destruction by something completely different. In other words, I like to see a surrogacy worthy of the name, a real surrogacy solidarity. I'll wager there is no technological fix for the violent predicament that human gestators are in.
Violent predicament of pregnancy.
Baby making might be a good idea, and the same goes for more ambitious research and development.
Yes, she
beyond
did.
Abortion and contraception. But fundamentally, the whole world deserves to reap the benefits of already available techniques currently monopolized by capitalism's elites. It's the political struggle for access and control.
The only reason that we're not already having all children via surrogacy, or I'm sorry, gestational assistance, is because capitalism prevents everyone from having access to surrogacy. And so the evil capitalism will force the marginalized, oppressed populations to go through the violence that is a natural pregnancy, in which they could literally die, and therefore pregnancy is emblematic of inequity. And in order to achieve full equity, we must get rid of capitalism, because capitalism is preventing oppressed people from accessing surrogacy, forcing them to put their lives on the line in order to be able to carry a child to birth. But apparently it does. Like, the surrogates are totally allowed to put their lives on the line. The surrogate, like, we don't, like, excuse me, not surrogates, gestational assistants.
Oh, the commoning or communization of reprotech that matters most. It's
Alyssa says, why don't they want natural births? Because, bing! Written in the Communist Manifesto is the goal of abolishing the biological family, because as long as the biological family exists, then you are always going to have more loyalty to your biological family versus loyalty to the state. They need to get rid of the biological family so that everyone is beholden on the state. That is why they are trying to get rid of natural birth and have everything born via surrogacy. People have got to read the Communist Manifesto.
certainly going to be up to us, since technocrats aren't going to do it for us, to orchestrate intensive scientific inquiry into ways to tweak bodily biology to better privilege, protect, support, and empower those with.
Well, okay, so hang on. Tom J says almost all surrogates are poor women making money, though. Well, that what she's going to say to that is because capitalism, the evils of capitalism, has perverted the beautiful process of surrogacy that literally saves lives, and therefore the real problem is capitalism.
Uteruses who find themselves put to work by a placenta. Far from a cop-out, saying there is no miracle fix for gestation, except seizing the means of reproduction, should light a fire under our desires to...
Ooh! Not here is a socialist. Yes, it does. Do you want me to find the part? Hang on. Let me find the part where it says that. We'll do this live. Hang on. Give me a second. Give me a second. Right here. Let me read what it says in the Communist Manifesto. You're saying it doesn't say anything like that in the Communist Manifesto? Let me read to you from the Communist Manifesto. Abolish the family. Even the most radical flare-up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In its completely developed form, the family exists only among the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians in public prostitution. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime, we plead guilty. Don't tell me what the fucking Communist Manifesto says, bro. Don't try to pull that shit on this channel. I will call you out live on the fucking internet. All right, 30 more seconds.
Abolish the obstetric present state of things. Beyond the centuries-long circular debate about whether our pregnancies are natural or pathological, there is, I know, a gestational commune, and I want to live in it.
She wants to live in a gestational commune. That, my friends, is Well, I made for some of you your first introduction to Sophie Lewis. I have done other streams about Sophie Lewis. Sophie Lewis is an insane person. She is possibly the most dystopian person on all of YouTube. I have yet to find someone that is more dystopian than Sophie Lewis is. I'm sure we will someday. She can't be the most dystopian person in all of YouTube, but she is for right this second. If someone can find me someone more dystopian than Sophie Lewis, please let me know. But guys, that's going to wrap up Socialism Saturday for today. We do Socialism Saturday on most Saturdays at 6 p.m. We watch the most dystopian shit you will ever find in your life. We talk about it. We recoil in horror. It's a little masochistic, I'm going to be honest, but you learn a lot. Well, Radical Moderate says, man, I missed it. Well, guess what, Radical Moderate? You can rewind and start at the beginning because it's going to be on the channel on demand. Anyway, guys, I will see you next time for Socialism Saturday. Please mount that like button on the way out the door. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. There may be a Sunday special stream tomorrow around 2 or around 3 or 4 o'clock, probably not 2, 3 or 4 o'clock. I gotta go look at that, see if we can make it happen. But guys, we'll be back. If I don't see you tomorrow, we'll be back on Monday. And remember, movie night tomorrow in the supporter Discord. If you become a member of the channel, you'll get invited. If you join my Patreon, you'll get invited. If you join my locals, you will get invited. Join actively unwoke.com/support. Head over there. That's where you're going to find the links. And until then, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night. We'll see you soon. Bye.